if your mind's running circles again, second guessing every word you said, take a breath, reset your track. You don't need to hold yourself back. Stop overthinking, start connecting. Confidence maxing.
All right, we're live. Welcome to episode 3 of Confidence Maxing Live, the show where I talk about interesting stories that I find along this crazy path that we call life. And I talk a little bit about communication skills and social confidence, which my book, Confidence Maxing, I wrote the book on confidence, apparently. And so if you haven't checked that out, please do. It would be super awesome if you did. So what we're going to talk about today is, what have we got? We've got shared events, the self-help trap, and more. And so we're going to pull up our very first story of the day. This is less of a story and more of a Ed Lattimore tweet. If you don't follow Ed on the social platforms, you are missing out because he is awesome. All right, let's see. All right, here we go. So, saw Ed had a post and says he was replying to a post where he talked about people who actually experienced the 90s. What are some things that you miss about that decade that just isn't the same today? And Ed chimed in and he said, the community of media events. Folks went to the movies and talked about them. Albums were an event. Playing video games with your friends was an in-person social event. Who else remembers LAN parties? A little GoldenEye. We all watched something at the same time or just missed it or waited for reruns. Streaming everything is convenient, but it removed an automatic piece of social cohesion. And so what that got me thinking about is it got me thinking about how it actually I'll tell you a story. This is back in the 70s when the original Superman movie came out. My dad would tell me a story every once in a while where he and my mom went to see the Superman movie in theaters. Probably a pretty big deal. It was like the first superhero movie, like the really big budget superhero movie. And they just randomly ran into his parents, and they sat next to him, watched the movie, enjoyed it. But just the concept of like bumping into someone at the movies, and you didn't schedule it, you didn't plan it, and it's just serendipitous, and you watch a movie with them. That's I think that's happened to me a couple of times, at least once. And to Ed's point, when he talks about just how things were an event, it also made me think of, when there is some kind of big event that maybe the closest we have now is like the Super Bowl or something like that, where there's a piece of social cohesion because you feel like you're a part of a bigger group, right? Where, you get into work on Monday morning, you talk about whatever the big thing was over the weekend that everyone knew about, right? And I think where we are right now is there's a lot of fragmentation in terms of everything's so personalized. Your algorithm's personalized, your movie preferences are personalized because you can just watch something on streaming. Movie theaters as a concept, obviously still around, but several, at least in my area, have gone out of business and been out of business for years, and only are now starting to reinvent themselves. Like there was one in my city that is, I haven't been, but it's like a movie house slash bowling alley, which I don't know how that works. Hopefully the walls are thick. But that concept of social cohesion, I think people love talking about what happened. It also made me think of why perhaps reaction videos are so popular. There's a lot of pop culture sort of reaction videos where a podcaster, a YouTube host, or something like that will watch a video, or watch a movie and then talk about that movie and make a video about that movie. And so people sort of get this like proxy version of social connection when they're listening to other people talk about a movie or something like that. So I thought it was interesting. And, I don't know exactly where we're going. I think that for the foreseeable future, I think things are going to continue to get a little bit more fragmented. Just in terms of now everyone has AI resources in their pocket where they can create nearly anything. They can create videos, they can create images, they can create memes, even memes about books. And they can even create songs. Like the jingle that you heard, my wife worked on the lyrics to it, but it was produced by Suno, I think that's what it is. And now, like, my wife and I have a little shared meme in between us where someone will say, "Stop overthinking, start connecting," and the other person will say, "Confidence maxing." And so I think that we're even going to get a little bit more fragmented in terms of there's going to be less of a blanket, like, hey, you can walk up to anyone and say, "Hey, did you see the thing last night?" People are going to be like, "What are you talking about?" Because they're in their own little bubble. My hunch is it's good for personalization, but it's less good for social cohesion. So that is our first story of the day. Next is the self-help trap, what 20 years of optimizing has taught me. This is a post. I'll pull it up here. It's a post by Tim Ferriss that he posted a little earlier in March. I finally got around to reading it last night, and basically the premise in the entire post is worth a read. A couple of the things that stuck out at me is that, and I'll quote Tim here: modern self-help contains an inbuilt flaw. To continually improve yourself, you must continually locate the ways you are broken. And I thought that was really interesting because there can be a real problem with constantly looking at areas of lack of skill. And so if you've read my book, then you know that I'm a big proponent of you have to show yourself frequent proof of your own competence. And over time, you will believe the proof. That's a really important part of my work. And when it comes to, I call it like excessive self-examination. It ends up really not being helpful at all because you're constantly looking at your own facets of your own incompetence, because there's something, you don't even have to be necessarily incompetent. You're just looking at stuff that you wish you could do a little bit better, and then you end up feeling like, oh God, I've got so much to improve, or I've got so much that I'm not good at. And in my mind, it's like, how is that conducive to improve, like really improving yourself and living a life that's enjoyable and that's, insert your preferred thing, productive or successful, whatever it is. But that excessive navel gazing, I think it can absolutely be a trap, because like you have to have a feeling of competence to be able to build confidence. And something else Ferriss brings up here is self-transcendence means going beyond the self. He talks about how there's a layer of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like there's a sixth layer called self-transcendence. Self-transcendence means going beyond the self, seeking connection with something greater, such as service to others, nature, art, or the divine. Why is it important? Well, for one thing, as Tony Robbins put it at an event long ago, I, me gets to be a really bleeping boring song. And I think this is a really important point. And we're going to cover this on the whiteboard in a second. But when it comes to, take the two extremes. You have on one extreme, it's I'm constantly looking at all the ways that I'm not performing, how I want to perform, and the other self-transcendent version of that is I'm useful to others, and I largely, in a healthy way, I don't care about myself. Like I'm not a very important component in the big scheme of things. If I'm constantly looking at myself, I can be much more useful and important in chasing meaning, to borrow Scott Adams' phrase, when I'm helping others and I am giving more than I'm taking, right? And I think in terms of self-help and all that kind of thing, how I view it is they're just different seasons of your life. They're different sprints in your life too. One major sprint might be I want to get my career on track, and so it might be a few years of doing that, right? It might be I'm gonna really dial in my education. Maybe that's the college years. Post grad or whatever you're doing. Hopefully you're a lifelong learner, and there might be other things like I'm gonna find a romantic partner. Okay, that's a sprint of life. My clients come to me and they want to improve their communication skills and their people skills, often to benefit their career, benefit their companies, benefit their personal lives. And I don't expect a client to stick around for a decade. I just don't expect it. I view their time with me as a sprint to get to where they ultimately want to be in a much quicker fashion than trying to figure it out on their own. And so I'm always really wary of if there's any sort of self-help thing or self-improvement thing where there's no incentive for the person providing the service to make themselves obsolete. To me, that's a big red flag. It definitely seems to feel more like a monthly subscription self-help service than a hey, you want to get from point A to point B. I will help you get from point A to point B in as little time as possible. I will certainly remove time from your journey. I tell my clients this all the time. I view myself as a human shortcut. And so I think this is a good segue to dig into the whiteboard, keeping the same theme of internal versus external. So internal versus external. Now, if you've been following me for a bit, especially on X, you maybe have already seen this. And basically, you have two sides. One is internal, and the other is external. Internal leads to suffering. External leads to meaning. For my clients and people who come to me that want help, a lot of what they give themselves in relation to communication skills is they're giving themselves an internal report card where they're self-aware enough to know, hey, there's things that I wish maybe would happen differently, which is fine. But what ends up happening in interactions, they give themselves a report card, and guess what? The report card's never a good grade. It's always a failing grade. And I think with excessive internal viewing, you kind of start to run everything through a filter of what does this event mean about me? It could be what does this event mean about me? It could be what does this thought mean about me? Because everything has to relate back to the self. And I was thinking about this, and I came up with a term called ego poisoning, where it's like you have an ego, and this isn't the ego in the sense of like I have an inflated ego and I'm the best. It's more of like everything has to mean something about me because all I'm doing is looking at myself constantly, which it's just not very helpful. And I think in terms of actions, what it leads to is it leads to a lot of hesitation because you're overthinking things, and it leads to a lot of stagnation because you've got so many options. It's like looking at a hall of mirrors and you don't know which option to go with. Um, Gonna lead to a harder life. Certainly a harder life to accomplish things in terms of taking action and moving forward. The much better path is, in my opinion, is external, right? So external leads to meaning. When you focus on others, you're focused on events over identity. It's not about everything means something about you. It's just an event. Oh, that person didn't text me back, or this thing happened, or that thing happened. Oh, it's just an event. Doesn't really mean anything about me. It's just an event. And chasing meaning and being useful to as many people as possible. Again, the Scott Ives phrase. Look up Akira the Don, Chasing Meaning. It's a fantastic track. And then ultimately, if you're externally focused and you're doing things and you're sort of exhibiting, could be sovereignty over just like your workspace. Like if you clean up your workspace or make your bed and, tidy up your house, do your lawn, whatever happens to be, you're exerting control over the things that you can control. And so that ends up, at least for me, that makes me feel really good. And that action, even the small actions, can start to create more momentum that leads me to a good place. And so, yeah, I think modern self-help can absolutely be a trap if you're focused on the wrong things and you're focused on ways that you're broken. Don't do that. You're going to have a bad time. So that is all I got for you today. Let me know how you like these episodes. I'm going to keep doing them through the end of this month. And so that you can share in my meme, my earworm, I'm going to play us out again with the Confidence Maxing jingle so that you start to hum it while you're doing dishes. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
If your mind's running circles again, second guessing every word